Good morning. It is Friday, November 5th, 2021. I am back here for Daily Shakeup number 220. And today I want to talk about values, core values, corporate values, business values, those values that many organizations have somewhat in place or ingrained in place. And now, I haven't said living in place yet, so let me come back to that. I want to think about this idea that some companies, if you say, yeah, I sort of have values, I guess we value this, that's not really ingrained. It's sort of an afterthought. And then there's some people who put time and energy into coming up with their values. They put them on the wall. They have signs. They might have little business cards made with the values and laminated, and they regularly ask people about them. So there's all sorts of ways we can look at values. And actually today, the topic is not values, but a subset of values. What I've come to believe is that the most foundational issue in any organization, the most critical foundation to all of it, is trust. And most organizations have trust issues. In fact, we all have some degree of trust issues. And it's this unspoken issue, the thing we don't want to talk about. We don't want to acknowledge there's a trust issue. And I found that whenever I go to talk to an organization or work with a team, whatever the challenge is or whatever the opportunity is that's not quite getting executed, there are trust issues that are at the core. I think we can all agree that, even though, again, we don't really want to acknowledge trust issues, it makes sense and most people can get it. But here's my question. If trust is so important, why isn't trust typically listed as a core value? I spoke recently to a group, a couple hundred people, and I asked, how many people had written values for the organization? Only about half of them did. And certainly there's an opportunity for us all to have stated values and be intentional about them. But then I said, so keep your hands up if one of your values is trust, not honesty, not integrity, because those are related to trust. They can touch trust, but trust as a value. And say out of 100 people who had stated values, there were maybe 3 or 4 that trust was actually one of their listed values. And I thought, why is that? For the same reason we don't want to acknowledge trust issues, for the same reason we avoid the trust conversations, because we want to believe that trust is good. Because if trust is not good, or we have cracks in our trust foundation, we know that's a big issue. And frankly, we don't want to acknowledge that issue because it can be frightening. So my point in all this is to do 2 things. Well, I guess 3. Number 1, be intentional about your values. Spend some time investing in them. And what are those core values? Not all the possible values. Get it down to a handful of values that these are your non-negotiables. These are the ones that you will choose even when it's incredibly difficult and perhaps at great cost. Number 2, be willing to talk about trust. Be willing to acknowledge that there are always trust issues. And while there are certain things we can do to build trust, it's even more important to focus on the ways we break trust, to acknowledge them and to minimize them, because we're cracking our trust foundations every day without realizing it or without being willing to talk about it. And third, if you're going, and when you do these values, and I trust you will, consider making trust one of those values. I guess I'm of the position today that trust has to be one of our core values, because otherwise it won't get the attention and intention it needs to help us have the foundation we need for great culture, great teams, great execution, great impact, great engagement. So that's it. Quite a bit about values, but the heart of it all is trust. Keep taking care of yourself and everyone around you, and by all means, stay connected.